This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Shout out to Chops, P Chops on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. I'm going to link to the spaces and everything so you can listen to the full interview. But Chops, he does these spaces on Twitter. I'm pretty sure most of you guys are familiar with it, but if you aren't, he does spaces on Twitter during the game, after the game. And he got Deshaun Watson to pop up. And I thought this was one of the better Deshaun Watson interviews that I've heard since he's came to Cleveland, especially from a football standpoint. I thought there was a lot of good information here, and Chops did a really good job of getting that out of Deshaun in a way that I haven't seen anybody in the media really be able to get that out of him. So great interview. Make sure you listen to the whole thing. But I have some things that I thought were very interesting from the interview. We're going to play the clips and we're going to talk about them. One of the first things I thought was very interesting about this interview was the process in which Deshaun kind of tries to get chemistry with the new receiver, and with Elijah Moore basically being this team's second round pick, with what the Browns did to move back to 72 for him. I thought it was interesting what Deshaun's process is and what he said his process was for going about, getting that chemistry with somebody new like Elijah Moore. And this is what he had to say about it.
Speaking of that, big addition, Elijah Moore this offseason. What has that been like, just connecting with him and kind of just, obviously we're not in camp yet, anything like that, but like, how do you develop that chemistry with a new wide receiver, especially someone that explosive?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is really just getting to know the guy. And me and Elijah's been spending a lot of time since last week. Really, since he got traded, we've been going back and forth through texts and calls. And then since we've been out here, just kind of connecting and just talking to each other. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people think that it starts on the field, but it's really that chemistry outside the field. You're going to put the work in, you're going to get the timing because training camp, you do that every day. But it's really just kind of getting to know the guy, how he feels in certain situations. Picking his brain, where he come from. Because as a quarterback, you got to know how everyone reacts in certain situations. And, with me having a guy come in from, you can call it how it is, a toxic situation from New York, I got to make sure that he's straight. He's motivated. And that's what he's been since he walked in the building. He's motivated, ready to work, asking me questions, about me, but also about football. Whatever I need him to do, he's going to do it. He's just like Amari, very quiet, but, he just puts in the work. So, all the guys love him. He's been a great addition, and we're excited to have him.
I know you were a crazy film guy. I remember watching that thing on YouTube, just you breaking it down. When you get a new receiver like that, do you go back and watch his film from last year of the Jets, or is it just like kind of you don't even need to?
Oh yeah, I've watched his film. I watched Goodwin film. I watched every receiver or every skill guy that we have. I've watched their film from if they're in the pros to if they're young guys from college to some of the guys even high school, because I played against or I've known about. So, I go all the way back. I'm a fanatic of football. So, like, I'm always on YouTube looking at highlights and trying to learn and just adjust how can I improve my game, but also the guys that I'm playing with, how can I help them improve their game and what they like to do and how shifty in certain areas where, I can be a better fit for them so they can have more success.
Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating kind of look into how Deshaun Watson prepares for his new guys, like hearing that he goes back and watches college tape, NFL tape, and even high school tape at times just to kind of understand some of the intricacies and nuances. And it brings up this part about Deshaun Watson that I think got lost with all the controversy about him, and with the fact that we just haven't talked about him in that way for like 2 years, right? Like he just has been out the quarterback conversation, and other guys have came and filled the void of where he was at in the quarterback conversation. And yes, Deshaun Watson was a good athlete, but where he was really being pushed was his cerebral ability, right? His football smarts, his ability to break down film and be able to break down everything in front of you, his obsession over the tape. It's one of the things that Dabo Swinney raves about him with. It's one of the things that we were all raving about him with when it came to his post-game press conferences, even in Cleveland and especially in Houston. He is a special dude when it comes to his ability to break this game down. That's been one of the main cases about him. It was one of the main reasons he got drafted at 12, if you remember him coming out of college, because people weren't saying that he was this tremendous athlete coming out of Clemson, and they were worried about the arm strength. Where people had no worries about was the mental acumen of Deshaun Watson and his football smarts. So it's interesting to hear his process and how cerebral it is, because that's something you would expect from like an Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Drew Brees, like that style of cerebral quarterback. But Deshaun Watson also does kind of pattern himself after those guys, despite his obvious athletic gifts and his ability to play outside the pocket. Another interesting thing to come out this interview was that how are you going to use Elijah Moore? Because a lot of us have a lot of different expectations for it. We're not going to really find out towards camp, right? And I think one of the things he mentioned in this interview, and I'll play the clip, is that he expects Elijah Moore to, play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage than we're expecting.
The way he runs his routes is very smooth. So a lot of people a lot of people say that, he's fast, but he's really explosive. And once he get the ball in his hands, he can make people miss in space and take it the distance. And I feel like that's something that we always wanted here in Cleveland. A guy that you can throw him a 5-yard route and it turns into 60 yards.
That kind of sounds like to me that they envision on using him kind of like how San Francisco uses Debo. Now, it's not going to be the exact same. Elijah Moore's not big enough to do a lot of the Debo stuff, where Debo's just straight up taking like balls from the backfield. But I think there is a hybrid role that you can have in there, kind of closer to like Percy Harvin than it is Debo, but where you can have him on some screens and arounds, just get him the ball in space, that kind of a thing. Like, it seems like on a second and short, if they're trying to get a big play going, that's who they're going to draw it up for, is Elijah Moore, because they feel like he has that big play ability on top of being a pretty good route runner. This was another interesting tidbit. We had always speculated that the Browns were interested in Deshaun Watson in the 2017 draft. I did a redraft recently where I thought that would be the case. But now we hear it from Deshaun's mouth. Deshaun thought he was going to be in Cleveland in 2017 during the draft, and he was even told by some people that he should. And also what's interesting is that Andrew Berry's kind of been in on Deshaun Watson for a very long time, so it's not a surprise once he became available. They were willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that they land him.
And it all goes back to 2017. I thought I was going to be a Cleveland Brown, honestly.
Man, talk about draft night. That's crazy.
Yeah, speaking of draft night, since it's tonight, look, I woke up in 2017. We're in Philadelphia. I wake up that morning, and Hugh Jackson, he texted me, and all he said was, "Be ready." So in my mind, I already know Cleveland got 2 first-round picks. I already know
exactly
was number 1. That's clear cut. Like, you should. If I was a GM, I would. But the next pick, I'm like, all right, cool. If y'all need a quarterback, let's make it happen. Like, me and Miles can really take this to a whole nother level and help this organization. But, it didn't go that way. Ended up in Houston, and I got all respect and love for Houston and the organization. But,
the crazy part is AB was there. So AB saw the vision, Deshaun. He had to get in charge to do it.
Right. He actually told me that when I signed last year. So
again, very interesting, right? Because we've always speculated this and we've always kind of like headcanon confirmed this, but now it's confirmed. Like, Deshaun Watson thought he was going to be in Cleveland. Hugh Jackson was pushing for it, and even Andrew Berry was pushing for it, but it didn't end up happening. Look, for all the good that Sachi Brown has done, Nick Chubb, this is one of them things where Sachi probably hurt us, right? Because it seems like Sachi was the one that wasn't in on getting a quarterback there at 12. And you know how it is in the first round. If you draft a quarterback, everybody has to be all in. So even one guy not being in on it can kill the whole thing. But that was interesting, just going back to 2017, because we're kind of linked to Deshaun Watson in the way of we were the team that traded the pick to get Deshaun Watson and then came back around to trade for Deshaun Watson. So we're always going to be linked to him in that way. And obviously now that he's a Brown, we're always going to be linked to him in the way that he played for us. But just another interesting thing to go back on. And he had something to say about the whole thing where people are saying that Deshaun Watson's going to change his offense to the point that we're not going to use Nick Chubb. Listen to what he had to say here.
Can we end the weird, again, Twitter narratives you talk about? Can we end the weird Twitter narrative that Nick Chubb's not going to fit into this offense somehow? It's Nick Chubb.
It's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's gonna get his carries. You're gonna see Nick Chubb take it to the house from 50 yards. You're gonna see him run it in from 1 yard. I mean, we're gonna feed 2-4. Like 2-4 is gonna get the ball for sure. So fans don't have to worry about Nick Chubb being unhappy or he's not gonna get with it. Nick Chubb is gonna run the ball. We have, if not the best O-line group in the NFL, and we want to run behind those guys.
I think this is something that we get so much in the weeds in the offseason, mainly because we don't have any real football to watch or NFL football to watch. So we're caught in hypothetical land, and we talk about how the offense is going to change so much that in our minds we're thinking that Nick Chubb's not going to have a place. But even a team that runs the football, not runs the football, but throws the football a lot, still going to have a place on it for running it. And I think the conversation has ignored the idea that, hey, the running attempts for the team are going to come down, but Nick Chubb's probably not splitting carries with anybody this season, if not very much. So he's going to have a larger percentage of the carries, which means his carries are probably going to stay the same. They're going to want to get Nick Chubb the football, right? Like the ideal of the offense is, hey, get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. Nick Chubb's a playmaker. Deshaun Watson's a playmaker. Amari Cooper's a playmaker. We're hoping Elijah Moore can be a playmaker. We're hoping David Njoku can be a playmaker. That's going to be the philosophy of the offense, is to get the balls into their hands. Now, obviously, a lot of those guys play receiver or receive the football to make their production. So Deshaun's going to be throwing it a lot. But also Nick Chubb, he's going to get his touches too. And especially if the game plan is favorable for the run game, he's definitely going to get his touches. But that's that interview. Make sure y'all check out Chops' Twitter and follow him there for the next time he has spaces, because great job on the interview, man. That was a great interview. Him, and if you want even more interviews from Deshaun Watson, from his perspective about the football stuff, Quincy Avery has an interview. I think it's up on YouTube with Deshaun Watson that I think is interesting. I'll try to find a link. That one's harder to find, to be honest with you. So I'll try to find a link to that interview as well, so you can listen to that. I know y'all want this season to come around. This would make the season feel like it's coming around a little bit sooner, but that's that interview. I felt like covering it. Shout out to Chops. Shout out to Deshaun Watson. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.